I talked about the major or prominent aspects of the essay, Thoreau's views, his agreements and disagreements. And today we'll have a discussion on the striking features of civil disobedience by Henry David Thoreau. So have a look. The striking features of the essay are: it is not a man's duty to devote himself to the eradication of any wrong, but it is his duty to wash his hands of it. If you remember, you'll find that I told you about this earlier. If a man cannot eradicate any wrong, it is his duty to wash his hands of it and not to give it any support. Under the name of order and civil government, people are made at last to pay homage to and support the meanness of theirs. So, if the action of the government is not approved by the people, it had better stop supporting the government. This is also a form of showing disagreement or defying the activities of the government. There have been brought many weighty and serious arguments against a standing army. When a government becomes tyrannical and it takes upper hand on the people or subject, and it wants to run the state on its muscle power with the help of the standing army, what happens? There serious argument there have been brought, and the same argument may be brought against the government. The standing army is only an arm of the standing government. Actually, the army acts in favor of the government, and it only carries out the order or it fulfills the wishes of the government. So now come to the concluding part of the essay. Here Thoreau asserts his points from different perspectives. There we'll look at the paragraph 45. There will never be a really free and enlightened state until the state comes to recognize the individual as a higher and independent power from which all its own power and authority are derived, and treats him accordingly. Here the author upholds the cause of the individual freedom as the basis of an ideal state which will be a really free and enlightened one. In order that such a state may grow, it should recognize the individual as a higher and independent power. That means the power or the importance of the individual should be recognized or should be acknowledged by the government. Talking about the contemporary state of America, the author points out that the authority of the government is an impure one because it is not based on the recognition and actualization of individual freedom. If a government wants to be strictly just, it must have the sanction and consent of the governed. That means the governed means the people or the subject. So if a government wants to implement justice, it must have the sanction or consent of the people. It cannot have any pure right over the person and property of an individual except what he consents to it. The government cannot intervene in the normal activities of a citizen or an individual, or it cannot take over the position and property of an individual, except the individual agrees to confer it upon the government. The process from an absolute to a limited monarchy, from a limited monarchy to a democracy, is a progress towards a true respect for the individual. In this connection, he has brought about the example of Chinese philosopher Confucius. He was wise enough to regard the individual as the basis of the empire. Every citizen or every nation should question itself whether it is not possible to effect the last improvement of a democratic government by recognizing and implementing individual freedom. That means Confucius put emphasis on the recognition of individuals' freedom, and at the same time this liberty or this individual freedom should be implemented by the government. That means this individual freedom should be visible. The author opposes the state and refuses to pay one particular item in the tax bill, which I had discussed earlier. He declares war against the state in his own way. Though the author wants to conform to the state, conform means he wanted to agree with the government, or he wanted to accept the activities of the government, but he couldn't. Why did he not consent to this? Actually, here he tries to point out that he cannot do that, because he realizes that the constitution, the government, the law and the courts are worthless if it's seen from a higher point of view. As we are discussing on civil disobedience, it is composed by Thoreau, one of the greatest thinker of America of 19th century. So it must be noted that here Thoreau has brought about a full array of arguments, and there are so many analogies and there are so many descriptions, and he has discussed from various point of view, and he has a viewpoint from a higher position. In America, there has so far been no genius for legislation. There are orators, politicians, and eloquent men by the thousand, but no one has spoken anything to settle the much vexed question of legislation. So again the author, he speaks about the much vexed question of legislation, or he wants to amend or change the law or points of legislature which go against the interest of the individual or citizen. Rather, these should be changed or amended to secure the rights of the people. The type of government to which the author is willing to submit is absent. That means the existing government is not or cannot fulfill the cravings of the author. So for the government to be strictly just, if the government wants to be strictly just, it must have the consent and sanction of the governed. So this is the major point, or this is the concluding part of the essay. Here once again our author H.W. Thoreau, H.D. Thoreau has put emphasis on the position and importance of the individual or citizen. So with this our essay ends. So so far as I can remember, we had finished doing T.S. Eliot's Tradition and the Individual Talents earlier. So get revision from that literary piece and have a thorough reading and understanding on this essay, Civil Disobedience. I'll give you questions later. So that's all from me for now. Thank you very much. Take care. Stay home. Stay with your online classes.